One thing I know I've realized is that through the pandemic is how much relationships matter, how much collaboration matters. And the pandemic has brought challenges to partnering, to team building. And, as we step out of it, I just fall back on how grateful I am for that the work that that my work was able to be carried through the time of the pandemic, mostly because of the partnerships and the relationships that I had put in place beforehand. That is when it comes to protecting older adults and protecting vulnerable adults from abuse. We've partnerships and collaboration is going to be the focus of the next couple of days, and I'm just really grateful for the conference for focusing on this theme, and I'm excited about a lot of the sessions to come. When we think about adult abuse, we think about it is a very complex problem. It's not a problem that one group or one individual can solve. And it really takes that collaboration, those relationships that you build in your community and among various professionals to come together and respond. And one of the ways that that can exist in your community is through the formation of a multidisciplinary team. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. And it's really going to be kind of a nuts and bolts session of what are MDTs, how they form, what are some common challenges that MDTs face, and how they can overcome them. You may have never heard the term MDT before. If so, this is the session for you. If you have an existing MDT or you've been working in a collaborative way in your community for a number of years, perhaps it's sort of going back to the nuts and bolts can give you some ideas about ways to refresh or rethink some of the things that you're doing in your community. Like I said, my name is Meredith Smith, and I am a professor at the School of Government in Chapel Hill. I mainly work with our courts group, and work with court officials. One of the areas of focus of my work is on adult guardianship proceedings. And my partner in crime today is Talitha Guinn-Shaver. She is the MDT technical advisor for the Elder Justice Initiative with the United States Department of Justice. And we've kind of divided this session into two. Talitha is going to start out and do some of that sort of nuts and bolts overview, and then turn and focus on some of the national resources that are available to support your work as you're thinking about creating or growing an MDT in your community. And then I'm going to close this out by focusing on some of the state resources that are available to you. And then we'll take questions. Feel free to drop your questions in the chat box if you have them. I'm going to be monitoring the chat box and for Talitha, and she'll be monitoring it for me. And we'll try to interject when they make sense, but then reserve some time at the end for questions as well. So I will turn it over to Talitha to introduce herself a little bit further and take it away with the first part of our presentation. So thanks, Talitha.
Thank you, Meredith. I am going to share my screen and get my presentation going here. So I'm really excited to be here today. I've had the good fortune of working with Meredith and UNC on quite a few of these MDT trainings, and it's always a delight to just share this information and to work with this group of amazing people over at UNC. So I just wanted to start out by telling you a little bit about the Elder Justice Initiative, because we are a resource for you in and of ourselves. And so a lot of people have not heard about us before. So I wanted to let you know that we are a project within the U.S. Department of Justice, and we have a variety, a plethora of educational materials for all different disciplines, including multidisciplinary teams. And me in my role, I run the MDT Technical Assistance Center. So I am here to help people like you who want to start an MDT or who are looking to grow an existing multidisciplinary team. I can help you locate materials, toolkits, research, whatever you might need. I can do telephone consultations with you when you run into those inevitable and predictable barriers that people go through when they're starting a team. It's never just a smooth, easy process. Here to help give some personalized care and attention to that, and help you connect to other people in the community who are doing something similar. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about what MDTs are and what we know about strong MDTs. And just briefly, I'll touch on some of the issues we know about addressing elder abuse in rural communities. I'll keep that part kind of short because it's a little more in depth than our basic session is, but I want to at least introduce some of these ideas and then give you some resources. So when we say MDTs, multidisciplinary teams, what are we talking about? So multidisciplinary teams actually grew out of a medical model that tried to look at the biological, psychological, and social aspects of a person, realizing that if you were going to really provide good care, you need to see a person in a more holistic approach. And when we talk about multidisciplinary teams, we're really talking about 3 or more disciplines who are working collaboratively and who are bound by a common purpose or goal. There are lots of different configurations of MDTs and many different people who can participate. In general, when we think about MDTs, we think about some of these key players. You might have aging services, personnel, law enforcement, geriatricians or other physicians. You might have victim witness advocates or other victim service providers, psychologists, neuropsychologists, adult protective services, and prosecutors. And MDTs can function in a variety of ways. Some will do case review. We are actually looking at an incident of elder abuse and collaboratively working together to see how you can best achieve justice for this older adult. You might actually be going step by step, what sort of social services should be offered to this individual, working with law enforcement to build a criminal case, working with a prosecutor to see what would be needed to file on the case. Other teams do different sorts of things that intersect with elder abuse. So they may simply try to coordinate cases better. So maybe they're not looking at the criminal aspect of it, but they're making sure that services are better coordinated for older adults, or they may work on policy or outreach or education, or a lot of teams do a little bit of everything. So I would like to just do a quick exercise that I think is a good way of thinking about MDTs. I would like for you to imagine your perfect peanut butter and jelly sandwich, right? And so if you would like to take to chat, you could even answer some of these questions about peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. So when you think about a PB&J, right, you probably get a picture in your mind of a classic peanut butter and jelly sandwich. But thinking about your favorites, wondering what kind of bread do you like it on? Do you like your bread toasted? Do you want it on a bagel? Do you have an open face? Do you use peanut butter or do you use almond butter? Do you use jelly? Do you serve it on apple? What sort of unique things do you have on your individual perfect ideal peanut butter sandwich? Meredith, are we getting any nifty answers in the, in the chat?
Yeah, well, some people you're making hungry. White bread with the edges cut off. I endorse that model. White bread, peanut butter on one side, grape jelly on the other, a traditionalist there. Another person said, I like strawberry much better than grape.
Right.
We have grilled. That's interesting.
Oh, okay. Don't want it to get soggy, I guess.
Yeah. Ezekiel bread, natural peanut butter, a little bit of raspberry jam. That's like next level. Yeah.
That is. That's very healthy alternative. So I think the point to this is to say that there is a standard idea of what you would think about as a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but then your perfect peanut butter and jelly sandwich is going to look a little different than everybody else's peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And the same thing is true with multidisciplinary teams. When we talk about MDTs, people get this idea of like, okay, well, there's a perfect model out there and we will try to incorporate this perfect model into our community. But your community is going to be the one who needs to drive what your peanut butter and jelly sandwich looks like. What do you need? How are you going to make something that's unique to your community and best meet your community's needs? So regardless of what sort of configuration and model that you want to put into place, there are some things that we know about what make strong multidisciplinary teams. And so the first one is participatory decision making. This is a process by which everyone knows that they have a voice into how they're forming and what they're going to do. And there's a balance of power and an empowerment of voice. This doesn't mean that your MDT has to function as a pure democracy and that everybody's going to vote on what you're going to do and the majority wins. But this is rather saying that everybody has valuable input and it can, and that input should be recognized and brought forward and shared equally. Understanding the concept of true partnership and understanding what is going into your partnership. So not just trying to wing it, but actually having those strong MOUs and other interagency agreements that formalize what you're doing and set expectations. My apologies. I have a kindergartner who is doing homeschool, and so I had to remind him not to sing so loud. I apologize. There might be a few of those. Hopefully, other people working from home can empathize about that. Okay, so interdependency. So this is the knowledge that what you do together is going to be greater than the sum of what you could accomplish on your own, regardless of which professional house you sit in. So the work that you do influences the team and influences the outcomes. And again, that idea of balance of power, this can be a challenging thing to establish on a multidisciplinary team because some people will come and sit at the table and inherently have greater power than other people politically or professionally. So if you are sitting down with a prosecutor and you're a community service provider, you might feel like the other person has more power. So it's really within the role of the coordinator to sort of flatten that power dynamic where possible. And the value in this is to give everyone the empowerment to speak up, to talk about the problems at their hand, to brainstorm about solutions, and to feel psychologically safe in their environment, to talk about these challenging cases. And then the last piece, regardless of what your team looks like, is to have a clear process. So understanding what cases you're going to hear, if you're going to hear cases, how you're going to do that. Are you going to use names or are you not going to use names? Are you going to work on policy? If so, what types of policy? Really getting into the nitty gritty of what you're going to do and how you're going to do it together to set those expectations. Also, strong teams have at least some basic understanding of the stages of team formation. So when I started out, I was working in San Francisco, and I was, at the time, I was the coordinator for the Elder Abuse Forensic Center there. I later became the director. But as a coordinator and going through that process of building this team and being involved from the ground up, I did not have this foundational understanding of the stages of team formation. And a lot of people who are starting MDTs don't come with this sort of background that you might get if you have a business degree or something that's used in the for-profit world more often. But teams are teams, and you go through similar dynamics as a team, regardless of what profession you happen to be sitting in. So in the beginning stage, you'll have this forming stage. You're energized, you've got ideas about coming together and who you want at the table. It's very active. You're talking a lot about what you hope to accomplish. And it's sort of the honeymoon stage of your MDT relationship. And then comes the storming stage. And this is where you will probably have some conflicting opinions about how you're going to do what you're going to do, who should have power, who should have leadership, who should be running the show, how if you're going to do case review, how the case review is going to take place, what cases you're going to hear, the process by which you will intake cases. And a lot of people get to this stage and they feel like they're failing. And that was definitely true with our team in San Francisco. We had such a glorious honeymoon phase that we thought, okay, now we have everybody at the table and this is going to work. And it felt like it wasn't working. So want to just put a bug in your ear that if you have a honeymoon stage and then everybody is kind of like up in arms and hashing through hard things, that you haven't made a misstep. This is part of the process of hashing out what it is you're going to do, as long as it's done respectfully. You're in a normal phase of team development. And then you will come into a norming stage. So you've hashed things out, you're setting your norms. We understand what we're going to do. It's predictable. And then hopefully all of our teams will get to the performing stage. It becomes sort of second nature. We've got our processes in place. We understand our roles, and we have expectations around the work that we're doing, and we're getting some stuff done. Strong teams have clearly defined mission, vision, and goals. And a lot of teams want to jump in and kind of skip this step. And I encourage you, if you have a team already, to go back and really look at your foundational documents and make sure you have a strong footing, because it will circumvent a lot of issues that you might have later on down the line. If you haven't started a team, I wanted to give you some resources here that are included in our Elder Abuse MDT guide and toolkit, whereby you can download samples of documents and modify them and really think together about your documentation and your mission. Good MDTs also know that this is not a one-off. You're not going to create your team and get to your performing stage, and then that's all the work you have to do. This is an ongoing process of evaluating your work, making adjustments as needed, bringing in new participants, and reevaluating that your work or the work that you're doing in an ongoing manner. So it's going to require an ongoing commitment of time and relationship building, trust building, and evaluating the work that you are doing. You'll have this presentation as a PDF, and all of these things are linked, so you can just click on them. But I wanted to give you some more tools to dig into your organizational rules. We have some sample MOUs. We have links to your state laws and statutes, which Meredith will give you more information about all of that. But this is an additional resource at your disposal. I cannot overstate the value of cultivating trust. As a first step of cultivating trust, it's important to really get to know each other personally. If you're working in a smaller community, you might not have to worry about this so much. You may already know each other, and you may wear multiple hats and know each other for multiple roles. Another key aspect of cultivating that trust is, again, setting those expectations, holding each other accountable, but in a respectful manner. Really having that active listening, making sure everybody is participating, that when you run into challenges, that you're focused on problem solving rather than blaming and pointing fingers. Remembering why you're here and that you're here for your clients, and refocusing the work on your mission and your vision and your goals whenever problems seem kind of big and overwhelming, and people or people decide that they want to start shifting blame rather than working through just finding solutions together. Another recommendation for strengthening your team, and this may or may not be possible in your community at this time, but this is working cases together, in particular doing joint home visits. So a lot of multidisciplinary teams will go out to the home of an older adult with more than one discipline. So you might have APS and law enforcement that would go out and conduct their interview together. You might have a psychologist that's going out with APS. So just thinking together about how you can utilize the staff that you have to reduce the number of times that the client has to tell their story, and to get a more holistic view of what's happening in that client's life. I'm going to briefly touch on a little bit of serving rural communities. Meredith, as I recall, quite a few of the teams here will probably be serving more rural communities. So I thought I would just touch on some of the things that we know about trying to serve elders and rural communities. So thinking about rural culture, there's a sense in a lot of rural communities that everybody knows everyone, and this can have pros and cons. You might have strong community alliances already. There's usually a value placed on independence and resilience. There may be close-knit relationships within the community, and an increased reliance on one another rather than the idea of outsiders coming in to try to tell them what they think that they should be doing. And there are challenges that come within working in rural communities, and these can be great and varied. So you might have issues that are just simply around the terrain. How do you get to and access older adults that you are wanting to serve? The distance between the services and where the elder lives, transportation issues, trying to get the older adult to see someone that they need to see, having connectivity. So maybe you're trying to do more remote work to sort of bridge that gap, but do you have the connectivity that you need to get that done? And then even inclement weather, especially in places where winters can be more severe. So I don't want just to, point out that there are challenges. I want to talk a little bit about the fact that we know that there are solutions to these challenges. So I want to talk about, again, the value of understanding what you're doing in terms of confidentiality and reporting issues. So again, this is something that the folks at UNC can walk you through in greater detail, but just want to point out that confidentiality, while it's very important, it doesn't have to be an obstacle towards working together. There are lots of ways to hash out what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And having those written agreements and protocols in place, and reviewing cases for conflict of interest in rural communities can really go a long way, because you don't want somebody who may be peripherally involved with it could be a family member or a neighbor they know in a leadership role in investigating the case.
Talitha, I was just going to jump in.
The other issue that you might
There
have.
is a breakout session
Sure.
on one of the breakout sessions on Wednesday is going to be focused specifically on information sharing and focused on North Carolina law. So if you're having, you've got an MDT or you're looking to form one and you've got questions about confidentiality and information sharing, I'd put in a plug for that breakout specifically.
That's wonderful. That's always something that comes up, and it's a great value to start thinking about at the very beginning of your process if you can. There can also be issues with just understanding the level of elder abuse that's happening in the community and getting those cases, because people in the community may not want to report abuse. So I wanted to give some recommendations for ways to raise awareness about elder abuse within the community. So there's all sorts of public awareness campaigns that are available that can be copied. There's World Elder Awareness Day, World Elder Abuse Awareness Day celebrations, and there's a WeAd website where you can see what everybody else is doing and get great tools to download to use in your community. And also wanted to point you to Frameworks Institute. If you aren't familiar with them, they provide information about reframing the conversation around aging and elder abuse so that it can be better received and absorbed by the community. There's also challenges within the MDT itself. And so one of those challenges can be resistance to change. And so here are some tips and things that we've seen in the field that have been helpful to counter that. Really focusing on relationship building between the individual members and the agencies that might be involved on your team, and really focusing on generating buy-in. So to generate buy-in, you can focus on elder abuse education for the members who might be at the table, who might not have a background in elder abuse, focusing on cross education. So what can our fields learn from one another, where we touch the same cases or similar cases. Really having a research-driven recruitment materials, and you can get those again from our MDT guide and toolkit. So each chapter has a PDF, a downloadable PDF where you can see all of the research that was referenced in each chapter. And we have a recruitment letter that has a lot of good national statistics about elder abuse to help you sort of customize your outreach to other folks to try to get them to come to the table and to want to participate so they can see the value of multidisciplinary teams and serving older adults. Also making it very clear what members can get out of participation and what they can contribute and what the benefits are to the clients. And we also have a chapter that touches on all three of those things. And then just very briefly, I have a whole training around this, but I just wanted to mention this wonderful little formula that I came upon through a project called Rework. It's actually driven by Google, and it's free and available to anybody to look at, but they did a lot of research into what makes a good team. And one of the key elements is engagement, and how you get to engagement is recognizing the meaning of the work that you're doing for yourself as an individual and for your team. So the more the team understands the meaning of the work, and understands the impact that they are having to the team and the impact that your team is having on the community, that is how you're going to get strong long-term engagement. You have to have this understanding of the meaning and the impact. Otherwise, you're going to be running into burnout and just frustrations. And so if you want more information about that, you can reach out to me and I can share a presentation on that topic as well. I'm going to breeze through some of these other things because you might not be so deep into this work yet. But I want to talk about the need to extend the reach of limited professionals and just kind of plug MDTs as a good tool in and of themselves to do this. If you only have a limited number of people who can work on these cases, getting them all together in one place, whether it's virtually or in person, really can minimize that the need for chasing people down, playing phone tag, leaving messages, going back and forth. It's a lot more efficient to just bring everybody together, talk through a case, divide and conquer. There are also other options that you can have for extending that reach of limited professionals, such as sharing professionals across communities. So say your community really needs a forensic accountant. There are models that we can point you to that show how you can share a forensic accountant across multiple teams, whereas maybe an individual team couldn't afford their services or might not have access to one in the first place. So some other options for you to read through here if you're struggling with how to extend the reach of professionals. I also just want to mention that it's a critical element of a high-functioning MDT is having a strong coordinator. This is not a role that can really be glossed over or just thought, oh, well, we're not going to think about a coordinator because we can't afford it, or we haven't created a job for that, a job description and hired for that. Coordinators are very special, and they're more than just a pure admin position. Yes, they do case flow, tracking, follow-up, but their role is so vital because they assist with interagency communication, maintaining information security, managing conflict. And if you only have a few hours for a coordinator, try thinking about splitting apart the really key coordinating components from the administrative components that maybe someone else could fill, like scheduling meetings and sending to sign-in sheets and setting up and breaking down for meetings, things like that. So I want to just briefly touch on one way that you can fund the coordinator position that a lot of people aren't aware of, but VOCA funding does specifically allow for the payment of salaries to be used for elder abuse, child abuse, and elder abuse multidisciplinary team investigation teams. So just want to throw that out there that you can work with your the local VOCA to see if there is funding that you can access for position if that is needed, and there is a precedent for doing that. Lots of teams are doing that. I want to give you some resources for conducting virtual meetings. I think there's a good deal of you who are probably going to need to think about this, given coronavirus restrictions, but also just because of remote locations. You might want to think about hosting virtual MDTs. And we have information here from several groups that I find really useful. One of them is techsafety.org, and the other is reachingvictims.org. Both of these grew out of the field of domestic violence, and they center around using technology to help victims and how to use that technology in a safe and confidential manner. We also have our MDT guide and toolkit. And within here, I want to point out that we have some team building exercises for MDTs. if you're getting started, it's great to do a little mini working retreat and do some of these team building exercises, even if it feels a little silly or maybe not the most important thing that you could be focusing on. Again, it leads to greater trust on your team, which is a foundational component of a strong MDT. So don't lean away from it, lean into it, and do that work of building the rapport and the relationships. CFPB also has a network development toolkit. That's the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and their focus is on that preliminary work of getting your partners together. And so their toolkit could be really useful, and it's complementary to ours. And if you're working with rural multidisciplinary teams, here are some MDT resources that are specific to rural communities that you can go through. I would also like to encourage you, if you started MDT or you work with MDT, to join our MDT map. So we have undertaken this project by which we're trying to map all of the elder abuse networks and MDTs that exist in the country. And the goal of this is to, one, get a bigger picture of what's happening out there, because there's a lot of work that's being done that maybe people aren't as familiar with, but also to help you connect with other people who are doing similar work to you. So if you see that you're trying to build a community, an MDT in your community, but in the adjacent community, there's already an MDT, you'll have somebody to talk to. We also have an MDT peer support community. UNC has one that's specifically for North Carolina folks who are starting MDTs. This would be an additional resource if you wanted to talk to multidisciplinary teams in other communities. And you can email me if you would like to set up a profile and join this group. The idea behind this group is that you can ask questions about starting an MDT or running one, or how people conduct case review, or if they have sample documents that you could use. You can just reach out directly and talk to other people who are doing this work. And again, I'm a resource for you. Shoot me an email if you would like to set up a time for a call, or if you have any questions, and I'm happy to be of assistance to you. So Meredith, I think I will turn it over to you there, and I'll stop sharing so you can share. I'll take any questions or anything.
This is a nice moment, a nice break, I think. If anybody has any questions just generally about MDTs, about the information that Talitha shared, or some of the national resources that are available to support that work before we flip over into the last piece of this session, feel free to pop them in the chat. Okay. I am going to share my screen. So instead of having a PowerPoint presentation, I'm going to be using a website that we recently launched through the School of Government, that is the North Carolina Elder Protection Network. And this website was developed sort of in response to a number of meetings that we held and information sessions that we held across the state with many of you on this call and other professionals in the field doing this work to respond to elder abuse. I will note that it is the North Carolina Elder Protection Network, and our funding at the outset when we were developing this network was specific to older adults. And so that's where our work started. But many of the resources that we have available on this site are applicable, despite stating that they are for elders. They are applicable to the adult population more generally, and would be useful and maybe useful to you in your work as you are thinking about serving all adult populations. And we hope to eventually be able to expand the site more broadly to serve directly all adult populations. But I do work at the School of Government, and I know some of you may be familiar with our work and some of you may not, but just a quick sort of rundown of what we do, we're a little bit different than sort of a traditional university school in that we have a graduate program and teach graduate students in a Master's of Public Administration program, but most of our work, the majority of our work, is dedicated to serving public officials in North Carolina. And as I mentioned at the beginning, I work with our courts group and do a lot of work with judicial officials and specifically clerks of Superior Court. And as I was going about my work with them, one of the things that they really flagged as a particularly concerning issue were just the number of individuals that were showing up in their office who felt uninformed about the resources that were available to them, either related to guardianship or alternatives to guardianship, or who was available in the community to help provide a response to an older, a loved one who was being exploited or abused. And they were sort of being funneled into the clerk's offices, and the clerks felt somewhat like they didn't have the resources that they needed to respond to those cases. And then similarly, as we sort of spoke with clerks and other professionals in this field, they expressed time and time again a desire for a stronger connection among the people doing this work. There was a sense of sort of some resources here and there, but not a strong network. Who do I call for, when I have a question related to financial exploitation, or who has expertise related to physical abuse? And so we went about trying to develop these resources designed specifically for professionals working in North Carolina. And all are available for free on this North Carolina Elder Protection Network website. As a result of those conversations and the information that we gathered meeting across the state with professionals, the site is available. You can see the site here, protectadults.sog.unc.edu. And it really has four main components. There is sort of responding to that first issue that was raised, the sort of lack of information, the lack of the ability of resources, where to start, how to respond to a particular instance, or understand what particular professionals in the field could do and respond to a case of adult abuse or elder abuse. And so you will find on the website a manual that is available for free. You can download it, you can read it online. That is sort of a high level picture of North Carolina's elder protection system. It is not intended to be sort of the guide for if you're a social worker in adult protective services, the guide for you as to how you do your job. But what it is intended to be as sort of an introductory information, a high level overview of these various professionals working in this field. Part of establishing strong connections, strong community relationships in response to this problem is gaining a better understanding of how the various systems work, how they work together, what are their limitations, what are their strengths, and what can people do in response to a particular case. And so this is an attempt to try to bring together a sort of high level overview of many of the professionals working in the field. We've also got a number of tools on the resources page, in particular tools dedicated for those that are looking to create or grow multidisciplinary teams, a number of worksheets that you can see here and download for free, and sort of going to that idea that Talitha talked about earlier about establishing, a strong mission statement, a strong vision statement, a clear list of goals when you're initially having those conversations in your community about the work that you want to do and how you want to accomplish it. Some of these worksheets may be useful to you as you begin to have those conversations. Another thing that I would point out here, if you're not able to attend the information sharing session on Wednesday, my colleague Amy Wall developed this tool on information sharing in multidisciplinary teams. We have some challenges in North Carolina that but doesn't make it impossible to share information. It just is something that some things that you need to remember as you begin to form your team about who can share information and what type of information can be shared among individuals who are collaborating. on these issues. So that's sort of the first main part that includes those elder protection resources. We also have a training library that falls under this prong, where we have past webinars and recordings that are available for free on the site with information that you can kind of watch on demand. The second big piece is our Find Your Peers page. And this is intended specifically to foster and grow multidisciplinary teams in North Carolina. You can see this map here on the first part of the page. That is a map of teams that have either started forming or well on their way or been operating for a number of years in North Carolina to respond to elder abuse and adult abuse more generally. By clicking on any of the counties in orange, you can see, for example, I'll click on Guilford because we're going to be hearing from a number of their members as part of a panel discussion also on Wednesday, where they're going to come together and talk about their experience. But by clicking on Guilford, you can see at the top here, there are two coordinators for their team, Heather McGill and Diane Hayden, and you can scroll through and see who are the members of their team. So if you live in that community and you're interested in joining a team in responding to these cases and being active in this field, you can click on the county and contact the coordinator about joining that team. If your county is in gray, because there is either not a team or just not a team that's registered on the site, you can reach out to us. And if you're looking to form a team, and we'll either connect you with people that we may know who are working to do the same in North Carolina or in that county, or work to try to get that county turned orange. So this is really to give you a sense of who's doing this work in North Carolina and where is it being done. Another thing that you may consider if your county is gray and you're looking to collaborate with others in your local community to form an MDT, you can go down to this Find Your Peers section of the page and search and filter. So you could search and filter by your county name to see what other professionals have registered on the site and are looking and interested in doing this type of work. Reach out to them and start talking about what it may look like to start to form an MDT in our community. So this is really about connecting all the professionals in the state that are doing this work and seeing where they're doing it and start to enable them to make connections among one another. So the third and fourth pieces on the Protect Adult site are again intended to create greater collaboration, information sharing among professionals. They require a login on the site, and you can sign up on the site by clicking this orange button. Once your registration is approved on the site, you can log in and access the forum, the discussion forum, which is similar to the discussion forum as Talitha mentioned, which is great to join both. I think the one that is offered by the Elder Justice Initiative is national and can really be of great benefit to sort of sharing information among states, learning best practices, learning what others are doing. Here, it's really focused on North Carolina law, what's happening within our state on these various topics. But it's a discussion forum. It's intended it's broken down by the various topics that frequently come up in addressing adult abuse cases, but it is intended to allow participants to pose questions and create a conversation among community members in North Carolina. One of the things that I really like is scam sharing. If you see something happening in North Carolina in your community, here one detective posted about a pine needle scam. Detective Sluter here posted about a pine needle scam that he was seeing in certain areas of North Carolina, and was sort of alerting other professionals working in this field to be on the lookout for something similar. So that's the third component. The fourth component is, as I mentioned, it's specifically geared for multidisciplinary teams. You can access it once your team is registered on the site, once that county is orange, and provided you are a member of your county's MDT, you get access to your county's MDT space, which is intended to be really an administrative hub for those professionals that are on the team and in a particular county to share information, to have a shared calendar, to have accountability through tasks that they can assign to team members. Here it was assigning someone with housing expertise to join the MDT because they identified that as a deficiency in their MDT. And so they wanted to find somebody in the community who had housing expertise. They can upload documents. So some of the documents that Talitha mentioned earlier, whether it's a memorandum of understanding or a memorandum of agreement, or if you have brochures and flyers that you use when you hold community events, this is a place for your team to store information so that all users have access to it. One of the things that we heard among teams when we spoke in the community, in various communities, was the difficulty with turnover, that oftentimes you have your team, you've done all the work to get everybody at the table, and then somebody gets a new job and that's great for them, but now you've got a seat empty at the table, and that person had a particular expertise, or they were the ones that kept up with all the community brochures or community information sharing materials, and so it becomes difficult to sort of run and keep track of all of the documents that you may be creating as a team. And so this creates a shared hub for document storage. It also includes a place to import your mission statement, your vision statement, and create a shared contact list for all the team members. But that's sort of the big, broad overview of the site and what is intended to do, which is really to support the work of professionals who are responding to abuse, neglect, and exploitation cases in North Carolina, and supporting their work to collaborate among various professional groups. One thing I would ask of you all, if you have an opportunity to go onto the site today and click around, if you ever have any questions, you can always scroll to the bottom of the site. There's a contact us button. That's a really quick and easy way to get in contact with me. If you have any information or feedback or questions about the site, you can submit those here. They will go directly to my inbox, and we will circle back on those. But that I would ask, and if you have any feedback about the site or have any ideas for how we can improve it, or other ways that we can help to foster the creation and growth of these multidisciplinary teams in North Carolina, I would ask that you do that. The final component of our work that we have been doing at the School of Government and hope to continue in the future is workshops that are focused on multidisciplinary teams, and where we bring teams to the School of Government. Talitha came our last in-person workshop, the fall of 2019 that we had, to that one that we held at the School of Government. And then we held a virtual series in the fall of 2020. We hope to repeat that again in the fall of 2021, maybe, fingers crossed, where we bring together teams from across the state. I think we had 6 teams in person the time that we were able to do it in person, 6 or 7. And we give them really that focused space to come in, spend a couple of days at the School of Government, have facilitation support to work on sort of building that mission statement, building vision statements, creating goals. If they're farther along in the process, identifying coordinators, carving out coordinator role and responsibilities. So that's another component of this work that we hope to continue in the future. I would say, if you're interested in receiving more information about that, like I said, create a registration on the site, and we'll be sure to post any information related to that on the MDT forum. But yeah, I hope this is useful and helpful in your work as you start to think about what works best for your community, and as you look to partner with others in responding to these cases. Let's see, I see a couple of questions in the chat box. I see once registered in the Elder Protection Network, is there a form feature for an MDT, like a means to communicate within the platform together? So there isn't a specific form for your MDT. That is a great feature idea and something that I am writing down and making a note of for the future. Right now, the forum is designed to be a mechanism for communication among anyone who's registered on the site, with the exception of judicial officials. They do not have access to the forum for reasons related to the fact that they might potentially have to preside over these cases. So if a clerk of superior court or a district court judge were to register on the site, they do not get access to the forum, but everyone else would get access to the forum. But it is a communication among all the registered users across the state and a way to share information throughout North Carolina. And the MDT space does not allow, it allows you to schedule meetings, to post documents, to assign tasks, but it doesn't allow a means of sort of like a chat board that's specific for your team, but that's a great idea. Yeah. Other questions. May individuals listed on the site who are not yet in an MDT attach resource materials? I'm not sure what that, I think that's from Anne. Hi, Anne. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that, but so we don't, right now the form does not have a feature where you can upload documents or attach resource materials. One thing we could, and so that's another great idea, great feature for the site, a way to sort of, by virtue of the forum, post attachments. One thing we do, you can see here when I posted the announcement for this conference on the forum, you can link to things. So if you have resource materials, I would suggest posting on the forum and then just embedding the link. And that's a quick way to allow people to access whatever information and resources that you want to share. And again, you don't have to be a member of an MDT to be able to participate in the forum. I see, is there a way for statewide agencies to choose all counties as a resource? Thanks, John, for that question. That is something we are currently working on. There are a number of professionals like John Marin, who posed that question, who work for state agencies or for other agencies that serve multiple counties. We sort of started this out with a county focus, particularly given that's the way that departments of social services are generally organized. But that is some feedback we have received from other agencies, and it's a feature that we're working to build on the site so that when you register, you can either identify multiple counties or you identify your services or your focus being a statewide focus. Because I think it's a really necessary feature that I hope to add, and I've communicated to our IT people, because I think one of those really strong partnerships can occur between the sort of local county partners and those resources that exist at the state level. We do have there's a chapter in the manual that really looks at those various state agencies in this other critical components of the elder protection system chapter that really looks at the number of state and federal agencies that are doing this work and where they exist and what they are doing to support and respond to these cases. So that resource is there as well. Any other questions out there? I think we are going until 3:15. So feel free to keep it coming. Talitha?
I have a request that if you do have an MDT or are starting a multidisciplinary team, I would love to see you added to the national map. And so just a plug for that as well. There are lots of other federal agencies that are starting to look to that map and to use it in their work. And I think it's great to have your state represented as strongly as possible. So there are a few states that like Ohio and Tennessee, where they require either county level or some other jurisdictional level MDT, they require them. And so their state might have 70 or 80 teams in it. I think Ohio has like 81 teams. And so it's just a nice way to showcase the work that your state is doing at the national level and to get some federal eyes just seeing, knowing that you're there and bringing attention to your work. So would love to have you participate in that as
so
well.
that's the map that Talitha showed as part of her slides. That's similar to this, but on the national level. So yes, we did have a question in the chat box, Talitha. I think so. This is from Joyce Evans, and she says, "How are cases assigned to MDTs?"
So this is part of developing your intake process, and it's going to vary depending on how you decide that would work best in your community. So a common way that multidisciplinary teams will get their cases, you might have a coordinator who is embedded with APS or embedded with law enforcement to try to help establish those close networking relationships. And so a case might come to the attention of an APS social worker, and they will need help with their case or want to consult with the various professionals who are available and working on your MDT. And they would fill out a referral form, give it to your coordinator, and your coordinator would review it, make sure that it meets your standards for intake. Is it the kind of case that you typically hear? And then can schedule it into one of their meetings. So cases often flow through Adult Protective Services. They also flow through law enforcement. So a law enforcement investigator might get assigned an elder abuse case and want to start collaborating. And so they too could reach out to the MDT coordinator and request that a case be put on the calendar for discussion. In actuality, it could work in any way that you think it would work best. So if you had a really strong nonprofit organization that wanted to chair the meetings and to facilitate that coordination, you really just need a person who is committed to helping with the coordination of cases, and a group that's willing to hash out what cases you're going to hear and what you're going to do with them when you get them, and develop an intake form. And all of those tools are available in the guide and toolkit. But remember your peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. It can look like whatever you want it to look like.
We had another question. Are you available to speak to nonprofit or community organizations that want to organize teams to serve in the elder community? I think the answer for both of us is yes. I'll let you go first, Talitha, to talk a little bit about what you do.
Yes, so as long as you are starting to form a multidisciplinary team, it doesn't matter who is going to be the driver of that team. If you're looking at working on elder abuse multidisciplinary teams, you can reach out and chat with me. I can help talk you through what you're going through, because it's going to be different with every team. So usually a consultation would involve you chatting with me about where you are, where you're hoping to go, what barriers or challenges you're currently experiencing, what barriers and challenges you're expecting to experience. And then we can sort of brainstorm, or I can provide resources to help you navigate that process. Is this one of those things where it's, it's going to probably be a lot of homework that will be given to you, but sometimes it can be really useful to talk to another living human being who's done this work before and who can say, okay, well, yes, I've encountered that barrier, and here are some creative ways that I've seen other people solve this issue. So that's what I'm here to help you do, be a person at the end of the line to help you through the process.
Yeah, and I would just endorse that, because don't sleep on Talitha's offer, because so rare are things free, and she really is free. So yes. She's incredibly responsive and helpful, and just seeing her in action in the workshops that we've done at the school with teams. And just sometimes you need to just process from an outsider's perspective. Here's the problem we're encountering. Why are we stuck? Right? We can't seem to get through the mud. Like, help us push through. She's really great at that kind of technical support. And so I just, again, would not sleep on that offer, because it is a really great one. I will say, just for myself, I'm happy to come and speak. And I've done a number, I will say, over the course of the last year and a half. The Zoom option has been so wonderful, because I've been able to kind of Zoom around the state and pop into meetings for 15 minutes or 30 minutes. If you have a sort of a community elder justice team, or to talk about the work we're doing at the school government and the ways that we can offer support. If you have legal questions related to the various areas that we cover at the school government, I'm also happy to connect you with colleagues that work in APS or criminal law, or in the fields that I work in estate and probate law. So or guardianship law. Yeah, please always feel free to reach out. And if I'm not the right person to respond, I will do my best to connect you with the person at the school who can best help address whatever question you have. So. Any other questions out there? Thoughts? I see a question from Kevin. Thanks, Kevin. In the last 14 months, have there been any new MDTs that have popped up? Let's see, 14 months. I'm like, what was for? So you're basically saying during the pandemic. Gosh, I feel like, what is time these days? I believe we've had a few pop up. I think we've had a number. It's kind of been surprising seeing that map turn orange. We definitely had, when we initially launched the site, sort of a wave at the outset. And we've seen sort of a trickle come more so, I would say in the summer of 2020 and late 2020. But that may not necessarily mean, that may just mean, from my perspective, like when they're connecting to us and saying, hey, register us on the site, they may have been doing the work for years or months beforehand. So I will say, like, just on that map, I can speak to that map. And as we've seen sort of sites become orange on the map, it's been pretty steady and pretty regular, even throughout the course of the pandemic. It's been impressive as they've sort of found ways to keep this work going. I know some of the teams that we had come in the fall of 19 were new teams, and they left, really motivated with lots of plans for the future. And then, March 2020 hit us all. And I think sort of adjusting and finding ways to maintain the enthusiasm via Zoom and in light of all the challenges that the pandemic brought, were really, they found a way to do it. And that's really impressive. So yeah, I see Durham County, Sampson County, shout outs to y'all. Y'all were a couple of the counties that turned orange. Absolutely. Y'all are doing some great work in both of those counties. So thank you for what you're doing.
Meredith, I can echo that that's happening nationally as well. So I have worked with a lot of teams over the last year plus there was one team in particular that in Texas, they had been given the go-ahead to form in February of 2020. And so before they had their first meeting, everybody was in quarantine. And so they called and said, well, we had been thinking down the line, we might want to have some sort of a virtual component. What do we do now? And I was like, you got to lean into that virtual component or you're not going to have a team. And so we have seen teams really embrace this. All right, we're going to do things digitally as much as we can. How do we make this work? And our program has a webinar that's recorded on running virtual MDTs that you can access for free and watch at your leisure. And we also have 3 handouts that are tips for facilitating virtual teams. What are the other challenges, virtual etiquette, things like that you can go and grab out of the toolkit and use as well. So it can be done. And if your communities are starting to come back to some level of normalcy at varying rates, so it kind of depends on where your community is. But it is possible to run virtual meetings. And I've seen lots of teams get off the ground this way and just start this way.
Yeah, and I think we've heard anecdotally that a number of teams who they've been able to connect with, whether it's somebody who's in the prosecutor's office who maybe is really, just couldn't get out of the office for an in-person meeting, but was able to, by virtue of the Zoom link, sort of pop on, that they weren't able to do pre-pandemic, but because of the virtual nature of the meeting, they were able to sort of broaden and reach new audiences that maybe or get new partners at the table that they weren't able to before. So let's see. Oh, Jane, hi Jane. Jane from Sampson County. She said we created a referral form that law enforcement and APS use to get their case on the case review. They're getting ready to have their first meeting on June 16th. So best of luck with that. What have you seen as a tipping point in prompting the formation of MDTs? I'll pose that one to you, Talitha, and then I'll.
Sure. It's really, again, different and varies in every community. So some communities have decided that they had to do something differently because there was a high profile case or something really tragic happened in their community and they wanted to avoid it. Other communities haven't had to have that sort of bottom fallout from them before they started rethinking how they were working. A lot of elder abuse teams have actually grown out of child abuse team and domestic violence teams. So you've got professionals that are used to working in this manner. And then, you talk about the turnover on multidisciplinary teams. There are pros and cons to that turnover. We know that one of the cons is getting everybody leveled up in their education and onboarded and understanding what they're doing there. But a pro can be if they're coming from a sister field like elder abuse, domestic violence, sexual assault teams, mental health crisis teams. They kind of bring from their world and their discipline ways that they have worked similar cases. So that this is another way that we see these elder abuse teams come into place. You might have a DA or a police officer say, why aren't we, talking about these cases like we do with child abuse cases? This makes no sense. And so out of their frustration for the lack of what they think should be happening because they've done it in other disciplines, a lot of teams form that way. I can say that every community that I have seen that has started a successful MDT has had a passionate champion. So whether it is because of a crisis or because of frustration or because you just wanted to do things in a better way, you have to have a driver that is willing to dig in, make connections, and have a passion for starting a team like this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just seeing Jane's name up there again, that we had this conversation. She came from, Jane Dudley is with Sampson County DSS. And she said that she came from child services and had seen what they were doing there and was like, why are we not doing this in adult services? So another shout out to you, Jane. But I think anecdotally in the teams that I've worked with, I've seen similar things to what Talitha has said. And, the story that always sits in my mind is a conversation I had with a social worker at the outset of this project. And she said, we go out, we work really hard. We're doing, what we can with the resources we have. And we go out and we provide services and we provide supports for an individual who's been, subjected to abuse, neglect, or exploitation. And then we see the perpetrator move on to the next person. And then we see them move on to the next person. And we realize that we only have so much authority within our scope of influence. And without partnering with others who do this work, we're never going to be able to provide a comprehensive response. And I just always think about her, that story, that anecdote that she provided, and how important it is in responding to these cases to really maintain those relationships and to build that collaborative response in order to ensure that it's not only that it's partnering to address not only the victim, but also the perpetrator, and then ensure that it doesn't happen to others in the community and as well. So any other questions? Well, I hope everybody has enjoyed the presentation. I guess I can stop sharing my screen. But I hope everybody has enjoyed the presentation today. Talitha and I are both available. Our contact information will be in the materials on the partnership website. And we're hope you'll reach out. Again, I really just want to put in the plug. If you register on the site, if you start using the site, please give us feedback. We know that it is only as useful as you all find it to be useful in your work. And we want to make sure that we're responding and tailoring that to be helpful to you as you go about your work. So thank you. And I'll turn it over to you, Kevin.
Well, thank you both, Talitha and Meredith. Excellent presentation. I just want to remind folks that we did record today's session, so that will be posted on the website. And as you mentioned, Meredith, these slides, and they're already, I think Autumn sent out a message in the chat that she's already posted the information to the website, which is wonderful. So we definitely thank you. This is great work. It shows the great partnerships that we have both in North Carolina and on the national level. It's astounding what we can do when we come together to bring partners together and work together as a team to make great things happen. So thank y'all very much for your presentation today. I just want to take a moment just to remind folks that I know we're wrapping up today, but again, I do want to just thank our partners, AARP of North Carolina, who really gave us some great funding to help make this conference free this year for everybody attending. So it's amazing where you can go and receive continuing education credits for free. And I know many of the attorneys and the social workers, you're normally having to pay out of pocket for these CEUs. So it's a great opportunity to receive free ones for the conference. And we also want to thank our North Carolina Senior Medicare Patrol Program. I'm actually the director for that program. We help educate Medicare beneficiaries about Medicare fraud and awareness. So we definitely thank those individuals that are providing financial sponsorship. And I want to thank the board members, as you talked about in your presentation, Meredith and Talitha, that they're volunteer boards. Our partnership, we're all volunteers. Most of us work for state agencies, or we did it one time and have retired, or come back to still wanting to volunteer on the board. I know Nancy worked at the Department of Health and Human Services, Nancy Warren, and she's retired from that, but she came back to be on the partnership board, and we're so grateful to have her. So we always are looking for more individuals to join the partnership and to come on board. I think over the next 2 days, on Tuesday and Wednesday, you'll see what a great job everyone has pulled together to make a fabulous conference and to go along with our theme of partnering to preserve and protect. This is a great topic and a great theme for this year, as we're all trying to partner and make this happen for everybody. Just a few other reminders. Remember, tomorrow morning, you should get a new link, which it should be the same links. If you don't get it, just come back to your calendar and use today's link. We again ask you not to forward that link to anyone else, as that link is yours directly. I know we had to work with Meredith and Talitha earlier, but we were able to get that worked out, which was great. Thank you, Allison, for doing that. But again, we want you as an individual to be able to get the continuing education credits that you are signed up for. I can't think of any other questions. If any of the board members have something that they want to remind me to say before we wrap up, please send that in the chat. I'm looking at it now, trying to catch our information as we go. But tomorrow we are going to start out. We have some great speakers for everyone. From this, we have the Governor Cooper coming on board, along with Attorney General Josh Stein. And then we're having Joyce Massey Smith from the Division of Age and Adult Services join us. And then we've got some wonderful sessions for tomorrow as well. So again, this training is free. However, Ann is asking me to say that the training is free. However, individual entities tallying credit may require payment for your hours earned. So just know that. I know that was also in the flyer for the conference, but there is, Samantha, is there an agenda or outline? Samantha, if you go to our website and you go into the conference, there is a day-to-day schedule of what is taking place in all the different sessions. And so the agendas are there. And when you registered, you pre-register for breakout sessions. So tomorrow, Allison, our host, has got it set up that once we go to breakout sessions, you will be going directly to the ones that you reserved and what you had signed up for to begin with. But if there is any change for any reason, you'll be able to come back to the main room and she'll be able to move you into a new room. So we want to make sure that you know that you will have a little flexibility. And I see that Autumn has posted the link to the website directly to where the conference agenda is already posted. So thank you, Autumn, for doing that. You see, we have a wonderful board to work with. So again, thank you for today. We're going to go ahead, and I know we're a little bit before 3:30, but it's great to know that we got done on time and we have plenty of room for question and answers. So we gave a plenty of a wrap up. But again, oh, there's one new message. Let me see. Oh, Nancy, so thank you so much. But again, tomorrow morning, we look forward to seeing you guys around, I think it's, oh, I better look at my agenda myself for tomorrow. 9:30 is where we're going to kick it off. I know the room will be open a touch earlier. And as you saw, there was a PowerPoint going, but we will have that up and going and we will start directly at 9:30 tomorrow. And hopefully we should wrap up the end of the day by 3:30 tomorrow, I believe, if I'm looking at my agenda correctly. So, or it's right at 4 tomorrow. I'm sorry, 4 p.m. we go tomorrow. So thank you for doing it. We look forward to having you on tomorrow. If you have any further questions, keep those. We can try to get those to Meredith and Talitha as well. But I think that you had their contact information from the presentations. So don't be shy if you want to reach out to them and ask a question. I know that they're willing to work with you. And again, thank you, Talitha and Meredith, for your presentation today. We look forward to seeing, and Meredith just put the information in the chat. So we again look forward to having you all on board tomorrow. You have a great evening.
Thank you.